Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Menachot daf Mem Dalid. We are going to begin on the very top of Mem Dalid Amud Aleph, Tanu Rabbanan. The Chilazoin, in which some people have an idea of what this actually is. Zehu Gufoi Daimul Yom. So its body is comparable, so it's Mare Gufoi, Tamnis Diyuknoi. The way it looks is like the sea. The form of its structure is comparable to a fish. It comes once in 70 years. And from it we have the dye of Techeles. Because it comes so infrequently, that's the reason why it's so expensive. Now again, there's different shitas. Do we actually know what the techelis is? We have a good idea of what it's, a snail or something along those lines. So it's an interesting thing because this Gemara says it's once in 70 years. Maybe that's what it used to be. Okay. So Tanya, Rav Nosson, kol mitzvah kala sheksuba b'Torah. There's no light mitzvah. Shein matan schara v'om haza v'om haba. There's not going to be a reward in this world and what to come. Again, this obviously goes against the notion, as we see in Masechtas Kedushin, of Schar Mitzvah B'Hayam Aleika, but different shitas. Any odeya kalma, so any odeya kalma, say v'lomim mitzvah tzitzis. If you want to know, let's look at the mitzvah tzitzis, which is a mitzvah kala. It's just a mitzvah saseh. It's nothing, not a huge mitzvah. Obviously, it's shokl kol Torah kula. So Masba Demechel, we have the famous story Shahizar ben Mitzvah Tzitzis. You have this guy, he was very careful, he always wore the tzitzis. Zain Bekar Chayam. So there was a harlot that was on the other side of the sea. Shenatel's Dal Mea Zehuvim Beschara. So she charged a tremendous amount of money, 400 gold coins, and Shigel Arba Mea Zehuvim. So he paid already in advance. He sent it in advance. So the money is already basically gone. So v'kavel lazman, he set up a time. K'shegi zmanoi bav yeshev al Pesach, he sat by her door. Nichnasa shepachsa v'amrula oisa adam sheshigolach dal mea zehuvim bav yeshev al Pesach. So it basically said that there's this guy who gave you all this money. He's by your door and he's waiting for you to let him in. So she said, Yichadis, let him come in. So Nichnas Hatzil Loi Zayin Mitais, there was 7 beds. Sheshel Kesef, 6 of silver, Vachashel Zav, of gold. Ubein Kolach V'achas Sulam Shel Kesef. There was this ladder connecting these beds. The El Yoine Shel Zahav, the top one was of gold. Also, V'yoshva El Gabi El Yoine Kishi Aruma. So she was on the very top. You had to climb up all these ladders to get to her, and she was unclothed. So he Taka went all the way up there, and he had basically no clothes on, except for his tzitzis. His tzitzis came, but upon him, they slapped him and they hit him in the face. So all of a sudden he sat on the ground, like refusing to continue in these advances. Yavhi nishmata v'yashva gabi karka. So she was pretty shocked. So she came down to him as well. So Amrlo, Gavashal Raimi she'enim mani chascha. He says, I basically, based on this person, he says, like, make a shvua in the life of the king, some officer of the king, or maybe it was an avodah zarah. You must have seen some blemish, something wrong with me, that you found me so repulsive that you ran away. So Amrullah, Havayid, I swear, Shlur Isha Yafa Kamoischa. I've never seen a more beautiful woman like you. El mitzvah achas sivani Hashem Elkeinu. Hashem gave me a mitzvah. Tzitzias Shema Iksiba Ani Hashem Elkeichem Shtei Pamim. It says that twice. Anihu she'asin l'payra, v'anihu she'asin l'shalom sachar. I'm gonna pay you back, or judge you and pay you back in a negative way for not doing the mitzvah properly or after. So it says, what's the 2 times? It says it at the beginning and at the end. So it says, I'm going to pay you back and you'll receive reward. Ashav nidmolai kedal edim. So the 4 corners were like 4 witnesses testifying against me. Amalo in manicha an shetamili. Okay, this is so unbelievable. I need more information. Tell me, Mashimecha, what's your name? Mashim Ircha, what's your cities? Where you from? Mashim Rabcha, what's your teacher's name? Mashim Midrashecha, where'd you learn all this from? Shatalamid by Torah, what you learned Torah. Kasav v'nat, so he wrote it down. V'nasim b'yad, and gave it to her. V'chilka kol nechaseha shlishul malchus. So she decided to split up all of her wealth, a third of it giving over to the malchus. And Rashi says that she was interested in converting. Shlish laniyim, she gave a third to the poor. Shlish natal b'yada, she kept all of it for herself. Chutz ma'oisan matzais, except for these fancy spreads, bed spreads. Uvasol beis midrash shor bechia. So Amrlo Rabbi Sivolav Yosinagiris. I'm commanding that I want you to convert me. So Amrlo Biti Shem Eincha Yosata be'elcha ben talmidim. Maybe your eyes cast upon one of my students, and you were so impressed by them, and that's the reason why you want to convert. So Hotzia Ksav miyada, so she took out this Ksav, V'nastalon and she gave it to him. Amrullah, he said to her, go and merit your mekach. In other words, you can go and marry this man. So he understood that this was quite impressive. All those sheets that Isser was done on top of them, now you could be married to him and you could use those, but it'll be beheter. Zem matan schar b'om hazel haba en yodea kama. So if that's what it was in this world, the world to come, you can only imagine. So much more. Omer Rabbi Yehuda, talis she'ula. When it comes to a borrowed talis, so let's say you have maybe a borrowed talis from, you don't have a talis, someone lends it to you. So kol shloshim patur min tzitzis. So it's a 4 corner. It means doesn't have the 4 corners of tzitzis on it. So it's patur tzitzis the first 30 days. Afterwards it's chayav. Tanya mihachi, and this is going to be question 1. Hadar bepundaki, if you're in a hotel, let's say, Be'eretz Yisrael, or ba'aseicher bayis b'chutzaretz, you're renting a house in chutzaretz, kol shloshim yom patur min mezuzah. However, even if you're renting a house in Eretz Yisrael, then you have to actually put a mezuzah there right away. And Rashi says the reason why is once you put a mezuzah up in Eretz Yisrael, shuv einu neitel, you can't take it down from there. Even if you leave, you have to still keep it there. As the Gemara Matzia says, Hilkach b'kaishi yatz mimena. It's going to be more difficult if you want to leave. Mipnei tayrech mezuzah, because mezuzah cheres. It's unbelievable. It's going to be hard for you to leave the house because you have to get another mezuzah. How much a mezuzah cost compared to everything else? But that's what it was back then. Even if someone else rents it, mehera kishiyimsena mezumenes mezuzah v'nif zereshom yushavas. Okay, so it's interesting. So let's look at question 1. So hadar b'pundaki or serich habayis im chayim mezuzah. So if you're in a hotel or you're renting a house in Chutz La'aretz, 30 days is pater. However, if you're renting a house in Eretz Yisrael, you're chayav right away. Question TA23, which is the same thing. Let's see what he writes over here for TA23. It says, Hasoicher bayis se'im chayevas b'mezuzah. So b'chutz haaretz kol amin yoyim pater mekan ve'chayiv. Eretz Yisrael chayiv l'alter mishum yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Question TB26. Let's see, hopefully I wrote this the right answer. B'pundako soicher b'chutz haaretz rak achar shloshim yoyim. Avol Eretz Yisrael chayiv miyad. Yeah. Mishum Mishum Eretz Yisrael. That's exactly right. That's TB 26. Okay. All right. Let's keep on moving then. That's going to be it for that. And then we're going to have 2 more questions on the regular test. All right. So, Tefillah Shel Yad Ein Makeves. So, if you have the Tefillin Shel Yad, so you get a separate mitzvah. Even if you don't have the Tefillin Shel Rosh. You have the Tefillin Shel Rosh, put them on. Even if they don't have Shel Yad, they're not ma'akev each other. So, Rav Chisda Lo Shanu El Sheish Lo. That's only if you have both. And for whatever reason, you own the Tefillin Shel Yad and Tefillin Shel Rosh, but today you only have the Shel Yad, so you can please put that on. Well, the Ein Loi Makeves. But if you only have, let's say, Tefillin Shel Yad, it's ma'akev. You don't get the mitzvah. You need the other one. So, Amrulo Amarta, is that true? You really said this? Amrulo, not really. Well, Mandalay Trey mitzvahs, Chad mitzvah nami lo levid. So, what are you supposed to say? Someone who doesn't have 2 mitzvahs don't even do one? Of course not. Of course, if you have an opportunity to do, there's separate mitzvahs, so at least do one. So what's the whole question? So mi kara my savar, because gzera shemi yipasha. Maybe he'll be negligent. Says Rashi, iamrin and enema keves. If let's say you say, just if you either one is okay, then yivshavol yikna ha'acheres. It's expensive. So a person may only have the Tefillin Shel Rosh. I'm like, okay, it's not ma'akev, so I won't get the Tefillin Shel Yad today. I'll get it next week, next month. So you mean poisheya. Amar Sheshas. Kol shein maniach tefillin is oiver b'shmoina aseh. If you don't put on tefillin, you violate 8, because Rashi says, Dalad parshu sheish behen. There's 4 parshas, of course we know. V'kol chad kaimi trei aseh. There's 2 assays, and Rashi goes through that. Here's question 2. So the question is, what are the 5 assayin? So Rashi says, to answer question 2, V'yasu, v'nosnu, v'haya, risem, yedilim tasalach. That's a hard question to get that right, but that's what the question is. Okay, v'chol koyin shenu oyel duchin, Oiver begimel asay Yivrechacha Hashem Yoer Nisa. Okay. Kol she'en bo lo mezuzah bepischo Oiver mishnei asay uksavtem. Because as we know, it says uksavtem twice. One in Veschan and one in Akev. The Yomer Shlochesh Kol Hamanech Tefillin Marach Yomim. Anyone who puts on the tefillin will have a length of days. Shnemar, as the pasuk says, as we continue to Mem Daled Amud Beis, the pasuk says, Hashem Aleihem Yichyu. Uchol behen chayi ruchi v'tachlimeni v'hicheni. So, as Rashi says, Oyusim shenoisnim lehem shem Hashem v'tfilin yichyu. Because you put you have the Shem Hashem, the Shin Dal Yud, so therefore you'll live. Okay. See the next Mishnah. Hasoiles, the flour. V'hashemen ein ma'akvin es hayayin, v'lo hayayin ma'akvin. So, what is that? So Rashi says, when it comes to the flour offering, the oil of a minchas nesachim, a mincha in which has libations, ein ma'akvin es hayayin. Shim hevi yayin below soiles hashemen menaschan. If all you bring was the oil, the wine, without the flour, without the oil, it's okay. Hamatanais shel hamizbeach achitzon ein ma'akvazu. That zu. So the Gemara in Zvachim discussed this. The Rashi says, for example, the carbon chatos requires 4 matanais, even though it's really ma'achokes beis Shem beis Hillel, but nonetheless we pass in beis Hillel that they're not ma'akev. She'umanosan el achas kiper. If all you did was 1 blood application of the carbon chatos, then it's fine. Okay, let's see the Gemara. Tanurban. So the pasuk says, uminchasam v'niskeihem, that we have the mincha offering and its libations. So haba mincha, it's clear that what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to first bring the mincha, v'yachach haba nesachim, and then afterwards the libations. So that's the proper order. First you bring the mincha, and then afterwards you bring the libation. And the Gemara then says, Rabbi Omer zevach v'nesachim. If let's say you have a carbon and libations, so haba zevach v'yachach haba nesachim. Same thing. You first do the carbon, and then afterwards you'll do the nesachim. Okay. For Rabbi Nami, so that is Rebbe's addition. Now, Rebbe Nami Hakasiv Umin Chasam V'Niskehem, right? So this pasuk. So what's the question over here? So let's look in Rashi. Haba mincha, the minchas nesachim kriven tchila, v'achach nesachim, acher hevarim miyad, v'achar nesachim hamincha. Minchasim neskeim, okay. So what does he do with that pasuk, basically? Because Rabbi brings up this notion about if you have a zevach and its libations, you bring the zevach first. So what does he learn out from minchasam v'niskehem? Hahuma boilu minchasam niskehem b'layla, that it can be even done at night. Now, on this Rashi points out the minchas nesachim, that when it comes to the minchas nesachim, it can be makriv even at night, and you can even maybe ask the kasha that it said previously in Perika Kaimitz, devarim should darken yikar b'yoyim, things that you're supposed to be makriv during the day, v'kachashiv minchas nesachim. One of the things that's brought during the day, including the minchas nesachim, is mefarshla, dehadin katana b'yom ben nesachim haboyim ima zevach. So if it comes with nesachim which are coming with a carbon, dehadin tani b'layla ben nesachim haboyim b'fnei atzman. So there's a distinction that if it's when it comes to with a zevach, that has to be done during the day. However, when it comes to nesachim that come by itself, then it does not have to accompany the zevach. Going shehevi zevach b'lo nesachim. We'll see he brought just the zevach. The achazman hevi hanesachim. If the atzman you bring the nesachim later on, yochel havim b'layil. You can bring it at night. But the truth is, you can even bring it the next day. The Gemara says, I feel sorry yomim, I think is the lashon over there. Umin chasam niskehem I feel machar. Right, that's the idea. It can be done at night and even the next day. Okay, because if it's referring to a mincha, a zevach b'loy mincha, that it's like a mincha which is bal b'fnei atzma, it doesn't have to accompany the zevach, and therefore it can be done at night and the next day. V'rabbanan nami hakosav zevach v'nisachim. So huma boyle likid ziri. What is that? Dear Miziri, in nisachim iskanshin el b'shchitas zevach. The nisachim are only become sanctified at the time in which you actually bring the carbon. Rabbi Nami b'boyle look at the ziri. He needs that drasha too. That it's only at the time of the shchitas zevach. Rabbanan Nami b'boyle. So okay. Rabbanan Nami b'boyle l'minchasam v'niskehem b'layla l'minchasam v'niskehem afilo machar. Elahainu tamaydu Rabbanan. What is the whole reason with Rabbanan that said this minchasam v'niskehem that you bring the mincha and then afterwards in the sachim? T'chsiv oilas oila umincha. It says oila, and then it says mincha. Okay, says Rashi. Mashma, what does that imply? Achar ha'oila, right after the oila, miyad yakru mincha. Then you can bring the mincha right afterwards. Okay. V'rebi nami yaksiv oila mincha, which again is mashma, right after the oil you bring the mincha. Ela beboyim imazevach, if we're talking about the nesachim, that is accompanied together with the zevach kol yom lo pligi. Everyone agrees the mincha v'yarcha kach nesachim. Dehaksiv oila umincha, right? So it says clearly you're supposed to first bring the carbon and then the mincha or the nesachim. So if we're talking about whether the nesachim accompany the zevach, everyone agrees that first kol yom lo pligi the mincha v'yarcha nesachim. In that situation, the mincha comes before the nesachim. Ki pligi b'boyim b'fnei atzman. When the nesachim are not coming together with the zevach, so Rabbanan Savri mideboyin ima zevach, when it comes with the zevach mincha v'yarchach nesachim. However, b'fnei atzma, if it comes by itself, then nami mincha v'yarchach nesachim. There's no difference. He always says it has to be a mincha then the nesachim. However, Rebbe says that's not true. Hasam who the id the askal b'achila, since you began with food items gamel kula milsa b'achila, because since you were talking, you had an oila and now you have a mincha, so that's achila and achila, so therefore that's why you bring that. Avol b'fnei atzma, but the sachim comes by itself, then adifi that is better. Hoyil demis amra shira alaya, because a shira is sung upon that. So that's basically what we're saying, and this is question 3. which the question is, let's just frame it, let's get the question down. It says, Minchas Nesachim, does the Mincha come before, or does the Nesachim come before? So, as we said, if we're talking about that the Mincha comes together with a carbon, the Minchas Nesachim comes together also with a carbon, which means, again, you have a carbon, you have a Mincha, and you have the Nesachim. So if that's the case, then everyone holds, first you do the Mincha, then the Nesachim. And it's because you have the Achil and Achila, and then the Nesachim. However, if the Nesachim come by themselves, right, without the Zevach, so then it's a machlokas whether or not the Mincha precedes the Nesachim. Hamatanai shel mizbeach achitzanim. It comes to Tanabanan minayin l'chol hanitanin al mizbeach achitzayin, that if it's put on the outer mizbeach shenosnin b'matana achashikip, or even one shenemer b'dam sevachecha yishafech al mizbeach hashamokecha. It's mashma even one blood application would be enough. Okay, let's get a little bit further. Let's see the next Mishnah. Haparim va'elim va'kvasim va'sirim. When it comes to all these different karbanos that are brought, ein ma'akvin zed. So if you brought parim but you didn't bring the elim, so it's not like, oh, you weren't yaitz in the parim. At least you have that covered. Okay. Rav Shimon Omer im hoylehem parim merubin. Let's say you have a lot of parim, v'lo hoylehem nesachim, and you really want to have nesachim to accompany the parim, but you have a lot of parim, you don't have a lot of nesachim. So it's better that yavi par echad, just bring one par, the nesachim, so that you have a nesachim that accompanies the par, then even multiple parim without nesachim. It's better you should also have nesachim. So says the Gemara, so hani parim ukvasim dehecha. What exactly is this referring to? Where is this going on? In other words, now which we say the parim, elim, kvasim are not ma'akvid one another, what holiday, when was this, what are we talking about? So maybe we're talking about on Sukkot, and on Sukkot we have all these karbanos. No, kamishbat Tomsky, which is mashma, it's ma'akev, that all these karbanos must be brought, and you can't say, oh, they're not ma'akev, they are. So it can't be the holidays. El de Rosh Chodesh, rather talking about on Rosh Chodesh, we had Seres, as well as on Shavuos, the Chumash HaPekudim. Says Rashi, so kol karbanos amur b'chumash haPekudim dehandi d'Rosh Chodesh v'atzeres seksum b'chumash haPekudim. So that's what it's referring to. Okay. Okay. So let's look at this Rashi. El d'atzeres. Actually, let's keep going. Rosh v'atzeres the chumash haPekudim. Oh, that's it. So let's look at this Rashi. So Katani mitaris kohanim nechsib Elmor El HaKohanim, and it continues on Amud Aleph. Elim Shnayim v'hikravtem al halechem zayin kvasim v'elim Shnayim v'hanach netaris kohanim lavninhu hanach d'chomish b'kudim. The karbanos that are mentioned in Taras Kohanim are not the same ones in Pekudim. So the ones that are mentioned in Bamidbar are not the same in Vayikra. So, okay, so let's hold off on that thought. So Elim dehecha. So when we talk about Elim, what is that referring to? Diahanhu. If we're talking about these, so the aisle who is only one aisle in that case. So we're talking about multiple karbonos. They're not makvi zed. There's only one. Seres, in which there are multiple aisles. So the Taras Kohanim in the mentioning of the aisles that are brought in Taras Kohanim on Shavuos. So Havoya Ksibu. It says Havoya, which is again is Ikuva. Well, Oilam that Seres the Taras Kohanim. It says Havoya. So V'hachikamer. Lo Elim the Taras Kohanim Ma'akvi L'ayel the Chumash HaPekudim. Lo Ayel the Chumash HaPekudim Ma'akvihu L'aylim L'aylim the Taras Kohanim. In other words, there's Aylim which are mentioned in Vayikra. There's some Aylim which are mentioned in Pekudei, in Parsha in Sefer Bamidbar. So one we're not going to say is Ma'akiv the other. So El Parim, so that's by aisle, an aisle. El Parim, but when it comes to the Parim, Diafil Hadadil Ma'akvi, even if they're in the same category, they're not Ma'akiv the Elim the Hachahudul Ma'akvi. They're not Ma'akvi, they're different categories. But in whom akvi, but if they're in the same category, it is ma'akev. So why by the parim do we have a different din than an aisle? So tanim mili katani. We're going to stop there. So the Tana's saying different things. Kaprishna, as we explained. Okay, so that's basically the idea behind that. And this is going to continue into next stuff, so we'll stop here. Adkan.